All right. If we're ready, go ahead, Michael.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, guys, for inviting me to your afternoon meeting. As you know, I'm Michael Groves with Dwarvin Enterprises, and I wanted to talk really about a revolutionary way to light your hobby using fiber optics. And I'm going to start just a little bit of background about who I am, what got me into all of this, what got me into even the fiber optics, and then obviously a description of how it all works, what we've been doing with it, what customers have done, and what's new. So that's a bit of a mouthful. So let's get moving on it. So if you go to a show, you're going to meet my lovely wife, typically, who's with me most of the time. And yep, so, but a little bit of brief history of my model roading experiences. At age 11, I was in the UK at the time. As you probably noticed, I don't have a Pennsylvanian accent or New Jersey accent where I used to live. But at age 13, I promptly stopped because we moved to Australia and I got more interested in girls and other things. But at age 31, my son was 7 and my wife said, here's a train set, you two, you get going with it and enjoy it. So that's what we did. And then about age 55, we sawed the set up into parts. And here's the picture of what it looks like to have your train set sawed up in parts. There's my handy sawzall. I couldn't find a machete, so I had to use the sawzall to get it done. But it's a little bit brutal. My son there with some of the work that he'd done, a lot of trestle work, hand laid track, you name it. So it's a lot of fun working with him on it. Well, so what I learned that rejoining sections is a pain, and you already know that, guys. But I also learned that rewiring is a headache. Another thing that you probably all know very well. Well, I was using grain of wheat bulbs initially. It was, in fact, my grandson's coal tipple that he put together, using grain of wheat bulbs. And we've still got them on some of the layout that's on a station that we've got. And I rarely, if ever, turn them on. And the reason is, although they're very small and bright, they're difficult to solder, lots of wiring, and horribly difficult to replace. So I decided, okay, I'm not going to go and use grain of wheat bulbs. I have to tell you what happened, though. When I put my train set back up in my basement here in Pennsylvania, all of the labels had fallen off the wires. And that made it rather difficult to trace everything. I'd been smart in putting all the labels on, but it took me 2 years to build out the basement. There I was, stuck with it. So that's when I started looking around for, what am I going to do? So I started looking, of course, at LED lights. Challenge for them, as you know, is anode and cathode. So we actually have to know which way to wire them the wrong way, and they behave like a reverse diode and don't work, resistors and so on. And it was when I came to Evans Designs and looked at all their nice LEDs, I came across this picture and I said, oh, I've been down that track before. I really don't want to do that again. So you just got to beware, though, of that spaghetti wiring that will get you every time. So one of my friends said, well, don't let that happen to you. So I started looking at the Just Plug lighting system by Woodland Scenics. Very, very nice system, which takes care of all of the problems, I think, with LED lighting. And fairly large, oh, actually, I missed a slide there, yeah. But one of the things I discovered was it had many, many components. And that kind of set me off a little bit because I was worried about how am I going to organize all of those different components and get the right ones together. And you also do require a fair amount of real estate to mount all their components. But, looking at LEDs, inexpensive and long lasting, so as you all know, polarity and voltage is critical. Spaghetti wiring is still a challenge. But I looked at the Just Plug system and thought, well, maybe that is a solution. So why didn't I go with that? Well, number one, it was too expensive. And I'll get into that in a moment briefly. Takes too much space into my layout. But most importantly for me was it limits creativity. I have to use a whole bunch of components to get the solutions that I need. Versus, as you'll see with a fiber optic system, it's a little bit easier. So I thought, well, how about fiber optics? No wiring. Easy to install, but how are you going to power them? Because when I mentioned this, somebody said to me, can't be done, Michael. Well, you have to know my background's in physics. And when you say that to a physicist, you're likely to get a different answer than no. So I just went ahead and bravely looked at what I could do. So I thought, well, if I'm going to develop a system for my layout, it'll have to have realism. I want to make sure there's a lot of reliability, ease of installation, very cost effective, but most important for me is provides for imagination. And we're going to see that as we go through this presentation. So here, there you're looking at my prototype, which I had on my layout for many years. Just got some fibers on the left-hand side. I don't know if, can you see my pointer at all? Maybe not. That's okay.
You can see it.
Yeah, Michael, I can see the cursor go, yeah.
Good. Okay, so I'll use it then. All right. So there's my optical fibers. There's a heat shrink tube, cheap, from Radio Shack at the time. There's a lens and behind that is an LED, a very bright LED that was running at about 700 milliamps. And then there's a big heat sink sitting back here. It's difficult to see. And then a great big fan to make sure that I could cool this big LED. So that sat under my layout for many years. And I just enjoyed the fruits of it because I only had one system and it was kind of cumbersome, but what the heck, that's a prototype for you. And then at age 65, my grandson was working on some electronics on my layout. And I thought, you know what? He looks as though he's going to be an engineer. That's money. So why don't we start a company? So that's what we did. And we started a company called Dwarvin, which he named, and I can go into the naming later with you. And we came out with this box. It took us about 2 years to really ruggedize the whole system, to make it so that you can just drop this on a concrete floor and it's not going to damage it at all. And also so that you can get the heat out of it without using a big fan, the optics and everything else. So it took us about 2 years to put that together. But conceptually, what you're dealing with is you mount this lamplighter box underneath your layout, and then you just run fiber up into the house, or you take a street lamp with fiber attached and run that down into the lamplighter. So basically, it's a very simple process. I say it should take you maybe less than 30 seconds to light your building once you've mounted the lamplighter underneath. Okay, so let me just run this. Hopefully this video runs and you'll see something of what I mean. So we'll take the fiber, we'll just insert this into the lamplighter. And yes, we've got light at the end of the fiber. But let's say I need to shorten it. All I need to do is I can just snip off the end of the fiber, no treatment necessary. I would drill a hole in underneath my layout. That's step number 2. Step number 3 is insert it into the building. So that I think graphically describes, I'm hoping the sound worked as well. Yep, how simple it is to light a building. Well, we also then added some lamps, and you probably noticed my accent's a little bit English and Australian. Well, I had a love for old cars, and I always wanted a Rolls Royce when I was young. I'm beyond that age now, so don't worry about it. You won't see me driving a Rolls Royce. So there's the fact that I rolls with a number of the lights on my layout. Those are with those gooseneck lamps, and you'll see the houses behind are lit as well. So one of the great things that I discovered about lighting was from a stage director who said, you know, what you really want if you want prototypical lighting is you really want it so that people move in and out of dark spots and into light areas, creating basically pools of light. And he came up to my diorama one day at a show and said, Michael, that's perfect lighting. Of course, I asked him, well, thought to myself, well, that's very nice. I wonder what he wants. But he said, no, this actually, because you have cones of lighting instead of a wash of lighting with an LED, you actually end up with much more attractive lighting. And I'll show you some images of that, which at first I thought was a negative, but this guy told me, no, that actually is a huge positive when you're lighting something. So when you look at this picture, you can actually see that the pools of light are very clear, and there's some nice dark spaces in between. So, and there we are. Well, there's my E-Type Jag. Now that is something I would like to drive now. Okay, I've got out of the Rolls-Royce stage, but the E-Type definitely. There's a small Mini down the front, but I don't want a Mini. But yeah, so you can see that just these pools of light, really make things pop. In fact, there's a classic example of making something pop. There's some guys working on my roadway, digging it up, filling it in as they do all day. And when I didn't have a light behind it, you can't see it, even when all the overhead lights are on. But when you put a small light like this on it, pop, suddenly it shows up. I'd say that's one of the beauties that I've discovered using fiber optic lighting. Well, one of my colleagues nearby, Al Judy, who works in the narrow gauge area, he came and grabbed some product from me, and about 2 hours later sent me a picture. And I just love this one, this little guy looking down into a dustbin or a garbage bin, about to probably pick some refuse out of it. But here's this little light, and it just sort of makes this little scene pop. Well, I want to let you know that it's actually, the company was founded for our benefit of our grandchildren. There's Benjamin, my youngest, and there he is making those gooseneck lamps. So he's one of the dwarves who used to work in our basement till COVID hit. Now he works in his own basement. Well, you can do some fun things. So there I have my English pub, which is on my layout. It's just scratch build out of the back of my head, you might say, but a couple of interesting features. Notice the small fibers that are stuck up into this tree. Very, very simple to do with fibers. Or how about sticking a fiber up under the umbrella lights, so the people that are drinking their beer can actually see what they're drinking and eating. Or there's a railway station with some, again, gooseneck lamps, but again, providing nice pools of light. And you'll notice right next, there's my guys digging up the road, but no light on them. Sad. Well, you do end up with a fiber spaghetti, because obviously you do need to run fiber. And this, instead of the running wires, we've got twice the number, you've got only half the number of fibers that you have wires, but it's very easy to trace the lights from the light source over here up to where they are. And I have a colleague, Paul McCarty, works in N-Scale, he's in Utah, and he sent me this picture. And he said his grandchildren now actually enjoy looking underneath the layout at his fiber spaghetti. So in the lamplighter design, it's very, very bright LED, very easy to mount, but very few components needed. It's easy to trace the lighting. And by the way, that last point, the other day, I had somebody who was going to come and visit my layout. And I was a bit embarrassed because all my fibers were just hanging down. I'd not really bothered about it. I'm sort of a bit sloppy when it comes to doing stuff like that. And it didn't matter how long they were because they just carry the light inside them. So it didn't dim them by having long fibers. I realized it looked an awful mess. I had about 100 lights. So in about 2.5 hours, I took them all out. I cut them, put them all back, and I had a nice trim scene. But that's all it took me. That would take me one heck of a long time if I'd done it with wiring. So I said it's really, it's a two-component system. If you're just looking for lighting buildings, you need a lamplighter and you need some fiber. Cut the fiber, stick it in one end into the lamplighter, the other end into your building. Yep. And so if you're looking at the sizes of fiber, 2 millimeter, more designed for O gauge houses, 1.5, which is what we mainly sell, O gauge lamps, but also HO houses, 1 millimeter, great for HO lamps. That's when all our lamps are made from, basically 1 millimeter, but in houses, because it's 1.5 is just too bright for an N scale house. Then we go to 0.75, which are most of our N scale lamps, but now we're getting into cars. And then 0.5 millimeters, which is what you saw in that tree. These are sort of pinpoint lights. You could use them to sort of candles in a window, lighting up a tree, little points of light. So that gives you some idea of the sizes of fiber. And as you go from one to the next, they're actually just literally doubling in intensity as you go from 0.5 up, each one doubles and doubles and doubles. So that gives you just some idea of, people always ask me, well, what size fiber would we want to go with? But let's say if I'm looking at just street lights, then it's a two-component system, lamps and the lamplighter, or I want to do buildings and some lamps. I'm basically don't have to have a lot of clutter of components. That's what makes this system, I think, a lot more flexible and user-friendly. Whoops. So that was from another slide I should have hidden. Anyway, so here's my 6-foot front to a layout. So over here is where I have my little Rolls Royce parked. The first scene that you see, there is my English pub over here. But I've got this sort of spread with a bunch of lights, and I've actually added more since I took that picture. Well, my layout there, it had 16 buildings, 21 street lamps, 3 umbrellas, 1 tree. So I used 2 lamplighter, 1 starter kits for that, and 7 sets of lights, and this fiber. And basically my list cost for that would be $392 in today's dollars. So I then looked at, well, what if I went to Woodland Scenic? So I called them up and I said, hey guys, here's what I've got. Here's my spacing. What do I need? So they told me what I needed. And I won't go through the litany of components, but it really surprised me as I looked at the number of different things that I'm going to have on hand to make sure I could actually do this properly. And the cost was considerably more as well. I mentioned the real estate requirements. Well, if you look at the Just Plug system, I would have needed 13 boxes. And I basically, assuming half an inch between each of those, I end up with about 4.5 feet almost of that 6 foot underneath, taken up in the front with those boxes. I thought, well, that's kind of cumbersome, because with the Dwarvin system, the lamp lighters are just 2 boxes. That's what I need. And so basically, a much more compact system. So again, just to remind you, that's the sort of layout we're looking at. So what was the cost per light to put in? Well, each box contains about 13 fibers of 1.5 or 28 of the 1 millimeter fibers. So average is about 20 fibers to light different structures. Total cost, list cost for the starter kits, $93.90. That includes 30 foot of fiber. So basically dividing those numbers up, end up with about $4.70 a light. Well, but when I look at it from the Woodland Scenic's perspective, it's more like $12.70 a light. A little bit different. Here's my diorama that I use at shows. And in fact, I've got it to my right now, and we'll take a bit of a closer look at it. So I've got some buildings. I've got 3 fibers only that I'm using to light my buildings. Then I've got these gooseneck lights. There's my mini, of course. And I've got some tents down here that are using 0.75 millimeter fiber. And well, there we go. So there's the tents. And of course, I've got headlights in my car. So again, very, very simple. I think to be fairly creative with the system. The other thing that you can see here is a spotlight. Well, I wasn't sure at first how to put a spotlight in. Of course, there's some fibers up in my tree there. I've got a carriage lamp, and I've got a globe lamp over here. Each of these, we sell all these products. And there's my little fire in the camp stove. But what I did do is I just drilled a hole at 45 degrees, put a fiber into it, and I got a spotlight. Couldn't be simpler and very, very quick to do. So, and again, this whole idea of pools of light, and I'll show you that a bit more on the diorama itself. So that's the product, again, the Lamplighter 1 with the fibers. Well, David, who is my second grandson, he makes all of the Lamplighter boxes. So if you buy a Lamplighter 1 or 2 or a 2S, most likely David has had his hands on it and building it. So those are some of our lamps, HO carriage, there's the globe, and then highway lamps. And interestingly enough, those have been used both for highways, but also parking areas and intermodal yards. So these customers have sent me pictures of those, which has been rather fun. Most recently, we've just introduced double swan neck lamps. Why? A customer was gluing our gooseneck lamps together and for his train station. So he's asked me if I could make something like this. So this is one of our latest products that we just launched at the show in St. Louis, the NMRA show. And there is our N scale one. Again, you see that pool of light. So there's the lamp there, just lighting over a building. We have the globe as well as the carriage lamps in N scale. We have an industrial building lamp as well. And by the way, that was the one we came out with initially for HO as well as for N. We've actually differentiated those. We've just designed up and released an HO industrial lamp that's almost twice as bright as the N scale one. And I took those to a show and thought, well, we might sell a few of them. Well, we sold out in a couple of hours. So that's when I discovered that's a hot ticket. We also have the Swan neck line. I mean, so O gauge line, O carriage, O globe. So I'll cover those quickly, as well as industrial building lamps too. You know what? We decided, well, why don't we add something a bit more to the product line? So I came up with the Lamplighter 2. It's really just double the size of a Lamplighter 1. And I decided, well, that's really going to be for the O gauge folks. It takes double the capacity of the fibers, so you can get a lot more 1.5s and 1.0s in those. But then I discovered that N scalers were buying these. I went, what is going on? And I realized that they said, well, to me, well, I've got this long table, or really often a door, and I got all my system on there. I can't fit all of the fibers in the Lamplighter 1, so I just buy Lamplighter 2, and I can do my whole layout with one light source. So I went, oh, okay. So it's being used actually by O gauge as well as HO and people and the narrow gauge people as well. So I want to talk about some tips for using fibers. Tell me if I'm going too fast. I don't want to make it slow, but I don't want to also go too fast for this. So if you're cutting fiber, my oldest grandson, who will meet later on this presentation, said, okay, Grandad, use a utility knife. That's your best result, a very sharp, clear cut. Second is use something with shearing action, a small set of shears. That's what you see in the middle. Third would be use a wire stripper, but use the shearing end of it to cut the fiber. But what I would say is, and this is probably the biggest no-no, never use wire cutters. Wire cutters will give you a pinched end at the end of the fiber because they're just pinching the fiber, or they're pinching the wire that they would cut. And you end up with about 50% of the light being reflected back down the fiber. You really want a nice, clean cut. So how about changing the color? Initially, I thought of building, people asked me to design up lamplighters that had different color, you know, for, let's say, turn of the century, meaning, you know, early 1900s lighting, you know, 1950s, and then moving into the later, you know, almost 2000 type, where lights are a bit whiter. And I started thinking about that and design and choosing different light sources inside this box. And then I realized, you know what, the simplest thing is just paint the end of your fiber. So you grab a translucent paint, and then I'm painting this little piece of fiber, which actually looks as though it's on fire because I've got this red here, looks like a matchstick. And then I have it up in my house. There's the guy trying to escape from the house on fire. Very, very simple to implement. Another thing, though, about fiber is the cold light. In other words, there's no heat at the end. Now, of course, it's not much of a problem for most applications with LEDs either. But there are some where I get notifications from products from China that says, do not leave this on for more than half an hour because it will melt the end of the lamp. And I go, oh, fair enough. But a fiber, you can stick it anywhere you like, and you've got zero heat coming out of it. Absolutely zero heat. That's a significant advantage. This has nothing to do with lighting. It has to do with making curtains. In my houses, I always put basically a translucent paper inside, so parchment paper or something like that. And one day my grandchildren had sort of scribbled on it using basically a waxy crayon. And I thought, oh, well, I'll cut that up and slap it on the inside of a house. Hey, presto, I had curtains. Very nice. Anyway, I'll just throw that one in for free. So let's have some fun with fiber, though. What if I took the fiber and instead of just keeping it as a straight piece of fiber, what if I nick it? What if I cut it, damaging the outside of the fiber? So what I did here was indeed that. I just nicked it, nick, all the way along here. And then I just painted it with the green. You can't see it, but there's my red. Green, red, green, red. And of course, I was thinking about Christmas at the time. There it is. I got a whole bunch of Christmas lights. Now, it doesn't take long to do that. That probably takes me about 2 minutes to create all those Christmas lights. Well, why not put them on my English pub? Now I've got a nice Christmas scene. So I take this. I had to bend the fiber to get it to shape. I painted it brown. Then I nicked it. Then I painted it. Then I glued it to the building. And all of that took me about 30 minutes to put on 60 lights, Christmas lights onto my building. And so here's the challenge. How long would it take to put 60 LEDs up? Maybe a bit longer than it took me to do that. No, but that's one of the fun things I've discovered with fiber. There are a lot of new applications that are fun. So here's Stephen Jacobs. He's done an HO scale model of Disney World. He goes there 4 times a year. His wife used to work there, so he has lots of fun. So there we are. So what he's done, he's got the fiber, he's got a gentle glow from the side, and he's nicked it in different places. So now he's got his ring of lights around the building. Again, he's bent the fiber to give him a nice shape around there. But actually what was odd was when he sent it to me, he didn't have any light on the flag. And I said, Steve, that's illegal. You've got to light up your American flag at night. So I said, here, just drill a tiny hole up there, stick a fiber up there. So next day he sends me a picture, and there it is. Very, very simple. Well, first time I was at an NMRA show back in 2018, somebody asked me, can you change the intensity of the light easily? And I said, no, you can't change the intensity of the individual fiber. What a fool I was. All you do is you take the fiber, pull it out slightly from the box itself, and you change the intensity. No need for resistors. And you can adjust it basically as you go. So you can then decide exactly how much light do I really need. Now, one of the greatest tips that I like to give you is about bending the fiber or straightening it. All I do is I take 2 tubes, I'll put the fiber in it, and I'll put it in a bath of boiling water. So I'll put one end against the edge of it, and then I just take the other end, bend it around, and I've got a nice bend to it. So there we are. So this are the sort of shapes you can make with it and so on very, very easily. If you go on the website, what you'll find is people talking about using a hot air gun. And I tried that. I ended up with spaghetti because it just whizzed up, and because I melted it too quickly. So but boiling water is absolutely a rugged way to do it. It never goes wrong. And if you want to straighten it, just put it back in a straight tube inside an aluminum tube, and you've got a nice straight piece. Just put it back in the boiling water. It's all back together again. Just be aware though, don't bend it too sharply. You will get some light loss. In fact, I would say this is a bit too excessive. Here's much more gentle bends, and you don't get much light loss. In fact, people talk about a minimum bend radius, and I'd say for 1.5 millimeter fibers, we're talking about a 1/4 inch minimum bend radius. For 1 millimeter is about 532. But my comment to most people is just experiment. You can actually have the fiber in the lamp lighter, put your fiber in boiling water that you want to bend, and bend it. I always recommend, though, using some pieces of stainless steel tubing or whatever tubing you've got around, aluminum, mainly because you don't want to put your hands in the water. But it also makes it a very nice straight piece of fiber with a bend. What happens if you cut the fiber too short? Or you have a modular layout. A lot of people are using our system with modular layouts, or you want to connect even different size fibers. Well, as we say in Australia, no worries. So what we did was we came up with the connecting fiber kit. We've got this basically index matching fluid that just does the index matching between the fiber and this and back into fiber. And we just provide these tubes. And all you do is you actually take the fiber, stick it through a tube, comes out the other side, you put a tiny drop of this index matching fluid, pull the fiber back halfway, stick the other fiber in the other way, and you get excellent coupling of the light. We can go into the physics later for anybody who wants to understand what's really going on. So, so we have these fiber connecting kits. So that makes it very helpful for those who are using modular systems, or where you might have bought a lamp and it's only got 4.5 feet of fiber attached, but you need 6 foot or 8 foot. Now, what holds the fibers into the lamplighter? It's basically a grommet. And I had to search high and low to find exactly what I was wanting. If you put one fiber in here, it'll fall out. By the time you get 3 fibers in, it'll be grabbed by these little fins on it. And as you put more in, this grommet just opens up more and more. So basically, it just adjusts to what you need. But if you only use a few fibers, you'll also find that the fibers, because they're curved, because they come off a reel, we buy them in half-mile lengths, literally. They come off a reel. Because they're bent and curved, you don't get as much light out of them as if they were straight. So what I recommend to people is if you're only using a few fibers, just stick some stirring straws into there, other pieces of cut off fiber, and basically that will just straighten things out within the lamplighter box. But that's only when you're starting out and you're just experimenting. As soon as you've got a whole bunch of lights in and buildings, it's not an issue at all. So here are the key benefits. Realism, I believe, because you get much better lighting than you will from an LED. You can add light in seconds. Absolutely no wiring involved with those. It's a cold light, no heat dissipated near buildings. It's a very cost-effective solution and allows for creativity. And so I would really describe, strangely enough, fiber optic lighting as the next generation of lighting for model railroading. So that's obviously the comparison when I see that diagram, or when I use it myself occasionally when I have to solder something for my wiring on the electrical parts of my layout, I shudder because I'm at an age where things don't work so well. So it's basically, I look at it as a 3-step system. Mount lamplighter, use your drill to drill a hole, beware of social distancing, and stick your fiber up through it. And that's really as simple as it gets. So I want to show you what some of our customers have done, just give you a bit of an idea. So this photograph came to me from Mark Jewett. Many of you know him. He's one of the reviewers at NMRA. And initially when Mark sent me this picture, there was no light inside the train station. So I called Mark up and I said, what's going on there? He said, well, I mounted the train station down, so I don't have access to it. I said, okay. So I only asked him one question. I asked him, do you have a drill? Thought for a moment. He said, okay. Next day, he sent me this picture. So he stuck the fiber up, obviously, drilled a hole underneath. What he was thinking of was initially what you would do with LEDs, much larger, and it would be difficult to mount this way with fiber. It was very simple. He does some beautiful camera work. So I like there's a shot of our gooseneck lamp. And he actually, you can't see it as well, but there are 4 headlights in that car. Again, beautiful job. That's my friend Al Judy down the road, but that's in narrow gauge. Those are the lamps he grabbed from us. And again, just gives this lovely glow to his trains. This, one of my favorite pictures, because it's, again, Paul McCarthy, N scale. And here's the lamp, and here's a guy reading his newspaper underneath the lamp. And that's sort of, to me, that says it all of, the directionality of the fiber lighting. So remember, pools of light is what we're really talking about. And you can really see that again from this picture from one of my customers. Now, this is an N scale. And again, this is an HO scale. This is probably, I would almost say, a little bit overlit on this train station. Now, this is my Thomas Kilcade painting that I got from, again, Paul McCarthy in N scale. He's using our lights, but he also used some fiber along the back. And actually, it's sort of fiber that glows. And he ended up with a beautiful glow. He calls it a moon glow. And later, actually, he lit his lighthouse there with fiber. And he really said, yep, it was a much better way than trying to use an LED to light it. So, but that's one of my favorite pictures. There's my friend Al Judy again with a lot of our industrial building lamps, and there again with a swan neck lamp. And initially, you notice actually there's this bit down here. We had to add a sleeve to it because we made them small. We made them the right size for HO, but he's ON30, so he added this. Well, now when you buy our lamps, they're longer. We decided to cover both because it's easier to stick more of this down into the layout if you're running an HO. There again, another good shot of Val Julius. And he just loves making dioramas. I wish I could make dioramas like this. This one he's actually got for sale. And then we have a thing called the Fiber Guild for Model Railroaders on it's on Facebook. And we just did a bit of a competition for people to send in their photographs. And I just love this one. It's like a night scene. It's wet. It's one of those, a little bit misty. And the lights really sort of sparkle in that. So nice work. Here's an example where Jim Roberts used our highway lamps to light his parking lot. And here they're being used to light basically a refueling station. And here in intermodal. So again, different applications for the same light. In scale, I like this one. This one's a nice snowy scene. And here we are back to my layout. You see those guys down there. The other thing I did here was I just stuck a fiber underneath this cover. I stuck some aluminum foil underneath the cover to give it some reflection, stuck the fiber out, and here I've got light. Again, so now you don't even need to buy one of our lights. You've got the fiber, just go for it. Very simple effects. This was a guy, Matt Newman, loved his lighting of his church. This one really got me. Steve Duranics, he sends me this picture and I go, hey, really like your lighting here. Yep, great stuff. And then I looked at this and I said, how on earth did you do that? So that's his actual name for his company. And he's basically got what looks like a fluorescent tubes. And what he did was he took fibers and literally he took a bunch of fibers, scraped them along the edge, and then put them behind basically a piece of paper where he printed up his name, and it's got a fluorescent light. So not to be outdone, of course, I immediately went back to my layout and made a Dwarvin lighting without wiring sign to go on my own layout. And that's behind the scene. You often don't see behind the scene on things, but there is lighter fibers. He's using heat shrink tubing over the fiber just to cover it. He's not actually heat shrinking it, but he's just using it. And he scraped it in various parts, not in other parts. And that's how he actually got that very effective lighting and variation within his building. So kind of fun to see. So another shot. This again, you've seen Stephen Jacobs' work. I shouldn't show that twice in one day. This is my waterfront down on my own layout. So here I've got my globe lamps. In fact, these don't come out so well, but I've actually painted the fiber with a slight orange color. And that gives me that sort of warm waterfront look. I imagine that my wife and I are walking down the waterfront. Here's my lights in front of the car. There's my gooseneck lamps as well. But turn the lights down and use some camera work. By the way, we can talk later about this, but getting good lights, good photographs of lighting, I found to be very, very difficult. And the guy who knows camera work came and showed me how to do this type of a shot. There's my American flag lit up at night, of course. Just again, I'm just using a single fiber. In fact, you just see a tiny glow from that. That's the fiber there and popping up onto the light. There's my spotlight. And of course, I've got brake lights. Those are red. So you can see those very clearly in the car. So, yep. And we also do have billboards, which we'll get into. This is my only, another Jaguar there. Okay, yep. I'm a sucker. Never owned one, thank goodness, probably, but I would love to. This is an O-gauge Jag lit with 1mm fibers into its headlights. This came from Guy Rob Hughes, and here he has got a number of different trailers. Again, these are all lit up with fibers. So he had a lot of fun running fibers and just painting them and so on. And Dan Umbach, and you see even this is, with plenty of light on it, but we still see a nice glow of those fibers in the headlights. As I say, we do have billboards, so that's kind of fun. There's one that I've mounted on my layout with Texaco thing on it as well. And there are some of my highway lamps up mounted onto a road that goes nowhere, typical of us in our train layouts. I like these. These pictures were sent to me by Larry. He was an O gauge. And again, you see these pools of light. So as the train comes in, you actually see a lot more motion than if you flooded that with typical LED lighting. And then it goes into globe lighting inside the platform, inside the train station itself, I should say. And this is a picture I just got 2 days ago by a guy called Roger Scroggins. And I've been looking for one of these. This is where he actually nicked the fiber, ran it up onto his oil refinery. And you can see it does a very, very easy and elegant job of lighting up an oil refinery. So again, and there he's got some of our lamps over some of his buildings back there, but I mainly wanted to focus on this. So I just put that in today. So I thought, well, you guys might be interested in seeing that. Well, there is our oldest grandson. He was the one who was working with me. And one day, so he's our senior dwarf. I was in Australia and I said, what are you working on, Austin? And he said, well, I'm lighting up a bridge sign. I said, why on earth are you doing that? Because I'd given him instructions what to do. But being a young bud, he was working away together with a guy called Michael Dettinger. And there you see it. Trenton makes, the world takes. Those of you familiar with New Jersey and Trenton see that sign on the railway bridges. What he did is he just took fiber, ran that along here, blackened it. Then he actually used a penknife and cut into this. I think today I would use a laser to do some cutting. And I think you could easily make lots of signage on your layout. I've been meaning to do that, but I haven't found anybody yet who's got a laser system that I can use. And I haven't taken the time to. But anyway, that was kind of fun. We have Rafter Lamps. People using those quite a lot. We just sell these actually as this part, and then you can just stick your own fiber down it. We have an RF controller sending things on and off. So you just plug that into the lamp lighter. This is the RF controller. There's the power. And you can now modulate the light. You can change its intensity. And of course, you can just turn it off and on remotely. I want to talk about, we've been in Model Railroader several times. This was work that, was done. And I'm going to jump through this. This one is actually where, who is it? Paul McCarty, right, there is his name. He actually then sort of said 6 reasons to switch to fiber optic lighting. He's absolutely, you might say, in love with using this technology. But that's enough on illumination. I want to briefly now touch on animation. With animation, you don't need nearly as much light. With illumination, you need huge amounts of light. And actually, I have another talk that talks about how much light do you really need? How many lumens do you need? What spacing should your lamps be? How high should your lamps be to be prototypical? But that's another talk that I give typically in the NMRA meetings. But here we came up with the lamplighter FL units, an animation unit that allows you to blinking, flashing, and basically you can turn lights on, you can turn lights off. It's DCC controlled as well. It's an all singing, dancing product. So here's our fully integrated railroad crossing. All you do is take 2 detectors, plug the power in, the trigger into the other side. You can put a bell on it, and then you put railroad crossings, they're fiber-based, onto the layout. Very, very simple system to use. Those are our railroad crossings in HO as well as N scale. And of course, we have them in the Big Brother O. And so these are the most difficult ones you can imagine to make. So my guess is that most of you guys are in the HO to O size. So we end up with basically this fully ready integrated railroad crossing kit. We've just got the FL unit, the bell, the detectors either side on or vertical, and then 2 railroad crossings. Well, we decided to come up with something simpler because I was getting too many calls, people taking half an hour of my time saying, how do I program this thing? I've got the trigger going in here and this is going here and I've got this not set up right. So I decided, okay, why don't I come up with what we call a dedicated flash unit, a DFL. That's what it stands for. And basically you can either put for N scale, you put smaller fibers in, or HO, larger fibers. And what it does is you can actually use it on your railroad crossings or block signals. And basically that comes as a kit. So basically the whole kit comes, again, we actually do it with 2 side-on detectors, Bell, DFL, 2 N or HO railroad crossings. We now have to actually have it in O gauge. So we replace this unit to be an O gauge unit for O gauge hole, basically, and O gauge railroad crossings. So here we go. So people have told me that it's very, very simple to put this together. I'm very grateful for that. So that's here, you've got the DFL unit here. Again, it's the same system as with the FL, simple in that you can't change anything. It turns off 5 seconds after the train leaves the last detector, but it works very well. So we have dwarf signals and we have tall signals as well. So those can be used as block signals in conjunction. So instead of using this with these, you're actually going to use the block signals. So there it is with the tall signals. And again, it's exactly the same configuration as for a railroad crossing. So there it is on my layout with 2 of the dwarf signals there, and there's a third one sitting down there. But most recently, in fact, this is absolutely brand new. So if you want to know where we're going, this is sort of some of the stuff we're doing. When you're looking at turnout machines, one of the things we really want to do was come up with something that was very simple that you could see, let's say looking down a yard, you could see exactly which light, which way a switch is switched or a turnout is switched. We started out with the tortoise motors, and now we've just added the snap twin coil, in other words, the Atlas, Bachmann, Pico ones, and also the snap bipolar ones. In other words, typical N-scale, Kato, and so on, another Japanese company, the Rapido trains, as well as LGB. So basically, we're now going to be able to cover all of the turnout machines, or possibly there may be some we don't cover, but they should cover nearly all of them. So take a look at this. So here's one for a tortoise machine. What you do is you take this little box, very small, Velcro it onto the tortoise machine, run the dwarf lamps, which have fiber attached into this, use 2 suitcase connectors to connect to pin 1 and 8 on the tortoise machine. That really is all you need to do. So there it is on there. And pins 1 and 8 always have power attached to them. And so they reverse in order to reverse the direction of the turnout. So it makes it for very simple switching of those lights. So that's our simplest turnout system. So 4 steps: mount the signals, Velcro the control unit onto it, connect wires to pin 1 and 8, but again, no soldering, and insert fibers into the control unit. So you can also have tall signals instead if you want. So that's the whole system, really. That's how it comes packaged for the dwarf system. There's the dwarf lights, suitcase connectors, and there's this little box. So major benefits: low cost, less than $30 to install, simple to add signals, runs off turnout machine, no long wires or fibers to run, and no soldering at all. But let's take a look at the snap twin coil. This is a lot more challenging, guys, by the way, because with a twin coil, it's a momentary push. So we only get to see a little signal that comes. Now we have to go, oh, that for, and which way is the turnout turned already? So we've come up with a system which really looks like the DFL. What it does is we just interpose this between, say, an Atlas turnout switch and the control for it, the switch itself, or the one you're going to put on the side of your layout. And you just insert the wires straight into these 3 pins here. And there's where you're going to insert the dwarf lights. And so basically this and the dwarf lights come as the kit for doing this. And obviously this is microprocessor controlled, because we really need to be able to sample and see when this the signal comes from here. And it also remembers which way the turnout is turned, unless somebody manually changes it. Then we're up a wall up the creek without a paddle. But we have a 2-wire one, and this is what it would look like for a Kato. Again, let's just take the 2 wires because it's a 2-wire system. It's got a permanent magnet and goes into its controller. So very, very simple approach. Again, easy to install, low cost. This actually runs off AC or DC power supplies. So you don't need to buy our power supplies. If you want, which makes it cheaper, you can run it off the bus. And again, no soldering to be done. Well, one of the things that I'd like to show you is, in fact, I've got it in my hand right here, is basically a lighting for for an area. So we've got an adjustable head on it, but we're still working on this for your yard light. That's what I meant to say. Right now it's 9 inches tall, which is way too tall, we've discovered, for an HO. So I've got to chop some of the base off of this to get it right. But that's another thing that we're working on. I want to give you some idea of pricing. Well, if you actually look on our website right now, you're actually going to see the prices are reduced 15%. I just put those on today. It's actually a sale that starts on Monday, but what the heck. But that's the lamplighter one starter kit comes with 30 foot of fiber. The 2 comes with 60 foot and priced appropriately. And then the 2S, which is a super bright, that's 70% brighter than this. We didn't talk about that yet. That's $169.99. This would be more for O-gauge folks, or we're really going to have fairly higher ambient light. I just want to have a little bit of extra boost of light. Most of our street lights run in this sort of a range. The industrial building lamps around the $21.99 mark. Billboards come with the fiber as well as the lamps, so they're all fully integrated. And then fibers, we range from 0.5 to 1.5 and up to 2 actually. So that's sort of price range for 30 foot of them, as well as connectors. The connector kit's $6.99. Flasher starter kit is $165.99, but this is actually what I call an a la carte type of product, in which you'd add in railroad crossings as you want, detectors as you want, crossing bell. So you can see the total kit price is going to be more like $250. And I'm just going to jump to this next one. On the other hand, for our DFL unit, the whole kit is more like $129.95. So much, much more cost effective, but you can only get one of those, one light out of that, versus with with the FL kit, you can actually have 4 complete separate railroad crossings. So it depends what you need and as to what's going to be cost effective. There's a switch for stall motors, and so that gives you just some idea of pricing. Do visit our YouTube site, which is called Model Train Scenic Lighting. We've got a lot of videos up there to give you oodles of information. There's our Fiber Guild for model railroaders as well on Facebook. It's really designed to educate. And the one side I really deal with very much, we do have on Facebook something called Dwarvin Ent, but I must say, unfortunately, I don't spend a great deal of time on that. There is another shot of the layout, of my layout. Again, getting these lights to really sparkle. And in fact, I'll tell you very briefly, the camera, what I did there was I used an f/22 shutter aperture. So I'm actually turning the aperture right down. It's rather like when you close your eyes and your eyelashes sort of get in the way of the light, it sort of tends to sort of really sparkle. And that's exactly what you need to do to be able to get a good shot of this. Plus, you need to better put it on a tripod. I'm running at 15 seconds to make that shot. That's the team. Oh, well, that was a team a year ago when we all had to wear some masks. There we are, unmasked. And this person is the only one who doesn't belong to the family. All the rest are part of the family. And my wife, my daughter, my son-in-law, who does all my finances, and the 3 dwarves who work on building the product and designing up a new product. So as I would say, thank you for your interest. And that's the end of this presentation. But I want to show you a couple of extra things. Plus, I'd love to entertain some questions. So let's get out of this. We get out of that. And yeah, oh boy, that's great. That worked well. So let me show you something that I did the other day, because it really helps me understand how to use this lighting system. So there's the lamp lighter. I think it's upside back to front for you guys, but you can read it. So I've got the fibers stuck in here. And again, all I need to do is take a fiber and stick it into the box. So I take a fiber out, there's no light, there's nothing to it. Stick it back in. And of course, I've got plenty of light. Put that down for a moment. And one of the things I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take a church. Now, these things come with a lot of colored paper, as you can see on here. And that paper is not very, it's too opaque. So I was at a customer the other day and he said, I got 4 LEDs inside this house, this church, and it just isn't lighting up. So I said to him, well, you got my fiber. What if you actually just stick the fiber up behind some of these windows? It's actually not coming through so well on my screen here, but if I was looking at this, you'd actually see a lot more light coming through. And so he suddenly realized that by using fiber, he could actually light these up much better than without. Again, I'm just not able to, I thought it would show up much better. Actually, I'm getting too much of a spot there.
We can see
Anyway, okay, so that was a fun thing that I discovered and helped him with. The other thing was a customer came to me and he said, you know, I've been playing around with your fiber and I decided to add a bead to the end of it. So I don't know if you can see that. That's a glass bead. Well, I'm just going to stick the fiber into my light source here. And you can see that glowing now. So instead of it being directional, I now actually have a ball of light, which I could use actually for a lamp. I could, you can make your own lamps doing that way. If you're stuck in a building, you're going to get a more uniform light than just having a single fiber there. So I must say, I just love what people do with our lamps. The other thing I want to show you very briefly, just because it's fun, is I was at a train show and I had one of these O-gauge lamps, and it had the electronics and the light bulb at the top of it. So I just took the top of it, I ripped out the guts of it, and the guy at the booth next to me just was horrified. He said, "What on earth did you do to that good lamp?" So well, you're going to see. So I stuck that. I just stick some fibers. So I stuck some fibers into it, and basically I've repurposed the light. In fact, I've just got too many fibers sticking into my box right now to be able to put this in. Hold a minute. I'll get to it. I need 3 hands to do this job. So hold a minute. I thought this would be simple. Good. Yep. Anyway, so there I have it. So there's my lamp. And so basically within literally a minute, I can repurpose some of these old lamps. And you can do that with some of the HO ones. A lot of customers have come to me with their old ones. And we said, well, let's just pull the guts out and stick some fibers up them. And we can change the color on those easily. Okay, so I'm going to do
Michael,
something. Yep.
Michael, pardon me for interrupting, Russell here. While you had the lamp lighter right there, and I don't know if it will show very well on the screen, but one of the things that when I was at your clinic, one of the participants asked, can you, are they all the same intensity, and by pulling in or out, you can change the intensity. I thought the guys might like to see that.
Right. If we can see that, I'm going to take this fiber here and I'm going to pull it out. And you can see how that dimmed way down. Now I'm going to put it back in again because I normally would have this mounted. So make it much easier for me to put in. Right now it's bending because I've got so many fibers in here. Sorry. Let's see. Okay. So I'm grabbing 2 fibers there. Yeah. Sorry. I'll stop doing this in a minute. Yeah. Okay. Got it. So now I've got my I've got my fiber back. I've got the intensity in it. So, right. So the further you pull it out, you can see that just dims right down till it's completely out. And obviously I've got no light at all. Yeah. So that's a great question. And here, I don't know if you can see it. I've got fibers with different colors. This one, we actually just put some red on it and it looks like a fluorescent light. So that's a neon light, I should say. And here are some bare ones where we've actually knit the fiber. Again, I'm not sure if you can see that glow there on that camera, but yeah, so you can see how it just glows out the side of the fiber. So, yep, great question. I wanted to show you the physical size of these turnout controllers, and it's the same size for the DFL. Is literally this sort of size. I'm trying to get it so you can see the labeling on it too. You just got basically the wires that go in the top. These two are actually a feed through the voltage. So you can either do this straight off your layout and put an AC or a DC onto it. And then these are the output. These are the wires in. And you just screw those wires in from the turnout controller itself. So just wanted to show you those are the sort of size and the box that these typically come in. There's the three of them. There's the dwarf signals, and they just come in a box like that. So again, very, very simple. And all of our, just to remind you, because people are always asking me this, all of our lamps come with fiber already attached. So basically, all you have to do is take it, drill the hole, and insert that. We come with 4.5 feet of fiber for those. And I think that's about it. I do want to, actually, I'm just going to show you my dioramas. We're going to turn this around a little bit. I'm just going to move some things off my workbench here. Show you my diorama. You see my diorama?
We can see it.
Okay, got it. So here is a typical one where you can see this signage here. The light for it, I'm just have to lift this up slightly. Oops, actually, I'm not able to, I'm going to have to lift this, right? So you can see the light. Okay, yeah, you can see the light that's sitting up on it. Well, or if I just put my hand over that, you see how effective that is. And then again, if you're looking at the lights themselves, so here we are, you can once again see the pools of light that you get with that sort of lighting. And all I have is in one of these houses, I'm holding my computer as well. That's just one fiber. So that one fiber is able to light that whole building. And they've got this little industrial light off the side, lighting the man who's trying to get into the house. And you can either I've targeted by bending the light forward. Here I have it in the center, and here I have it bend over to one side. And obviously you can do multiple fibers or whatever. There's my car with its headlights in it, and the tree, as you can see, the little sparkles of individual tiny fibers, and even my tiny campfire. I don't know if you can see that. Yep, there it is. So, all right. So I'm gonna stop for this and turn it over to you guys as to what you'd like to ask.
Michael, thanks a lot for your time today. It was just as enjoyable today hearing you as it was in Indy. So we appreciate you coming today.
Thank you. Thanks very much for accommodating me. Thanks. Okay. And remember, there is a 15% discount on right now on our site. You'll see it marked for the Lamplighter starter kits. And yep. So, but thanks so much and enjoy your work.
How long is that special going to last, Michael?
It can last through September.
Through September. Excellent.
Yep. And you'll see our ad in Model Railroader. That's sort of what it's tied to, where that ad will say that's 15% off through the end of September. Okay. So you have plenty of time, but just don't miss out.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Michael. Everybody on Zoom, thanks for tuning in today. Everyone here in the room, thanks for coming. We'll say goodbye.